When I woke up, very confused, she said, "You almost died last night. In fact, no one can believe you were alive."
I went into the games not knowing what was coming.
As humans, we just hate uncertainty.
You just sensed that it was out there.
You have to start somewhere.
We're all programmed to push ourselves even farther.
This is On the X, an IRONCLAD original. Hey everybody, welcome to On the X. I'm Chris Irwin, and today my guest is David Boreanaz. David is an actor, television producer, and director who's best known for his roles as Angel in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Special Agent Seeley Booth in Bones, and Master Chief Jason Hayes in SEAL Team. During our conversation, we discuss his background, what it was like to break out with his first successful role and character, the discipline behind the craft of acting, and of course, his experience playing a Navy SEAL. I really enjoyed getting his perspective on the NSW community as someone who has portrayed a member of it for so long, and he was also just a fun guy to talk to. So here we go with David Boreanaz on the X. Where'd you grow up?
Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Yeah, so close to Canada. Consider Canada a little bit of a home to me. I used to cross the Peace Bridge with my father a lot. Just raised in a normal blue-collar family. My father was hardworking. He had a kids show called Rock Chip 7, Dialing for Dollars, like a day show, like morning show.
Was he on air or was he producing?
Yeah, he was on air.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on air. He had one of the most popular kids shows in the 60s. It was called Rock Chip 7. You know, I had it was crazy. A lot of athletes that I know in the hockey world were big fans of the show because it was so close to Canada, and he would travel to Canada in a station wagon with this robot. It was called Promo the Robot, and he looked like a dishwasher thing with a head, and he had it was a puppeteer, and it was a very popular show. And guys and players now in the NHL are like, yeah, when I was a kid growing up in Canada, I used to watch your dad. So spent a lot of time in Buffalo growing up. Moved out of there when I was 7. My dad got a job in Philadelphia, AM Philadelphia, which is like a morning talk show. And he ended up retiring there. WPVI, ABC, which was Cap Cities, is now Disney. So I was kind of brought up in the entertainment television early days of television when there was only 3 channels.
Yeah,
and
I remember. I'm old enough to remember that too.
So it was, before it was Disney, it was called Cap Cities. And so my uncles were kind of like guys that ran stations across the country, like big wigs like that. I spent a lot of time with my father with the Muscular Dystrophy Association with Jerry Lewis, going to summer camps with my father, who would go and, give his time to charitable causes for MS. So I got out of Buffalo when my father moved to Philly, and Philadelphia became a really strong, impactful city to me. I kind of moved there when, all the sports teams were doing well at the time. So it was like perfect for me. I was leaving Buffalo and kind of edging over to Philly, and that was like
Dr. J
70, 78. So, Flyers and Bobby Clark.
Yeah.
The Phillies, Pete Rose.
Pete Rose, yeah.
That whole World Series run. That my first series was when I went to a game at the Vet with my dad. I played the Kansas City Royals. George Brett was on third base. So my introduction to Philadelphia was like kind of twofold. My two older sisters were kind of like, one was starting high school, and I was just kind of in the 4th grade era. So I was just happy to have many sports teams that were winning at the time.
Yep.
And I grew up in Philly, and that's where I, really kind of, found my place growing up. And I love Philadelphia and the city and the blue collar mentality. And I went to Ithaca College and drove out cross country with my father in 91. The two of us took a trip out, packed up my stuff and in a small white Mazda, and made it out west and settled with my sister, was living downtown, and ended up sleeping on a green couch for a long time. And, the rest is kind of like, hey, just find your way in Los Angeles. So my roots are I'm very rooted on the East Coast.
Okay. Me too. I'm from Massachusetts. And Ithaca actually holds kind of a special place in my heart because both my parents went to Cornell, and then my roommate in college, like my best friend, best man, he's from Ithaca as well. So
Yeah, great college, fantastic 4 years. I was talking to somebody yesterday about, I was like, my best 4 years, some of the best 4 years of my life were at Ithaca, meeting the friends that I had there. There are a lot of people from, Massachusetts, DC, Virginia, that whole area, and New Jersey, Philly. So no fraternities. It was just a group of people that were I almost kind of explain it as like we were like the St. Elmo's fire clique in Ithaca, parties at the houses, going to the gorges, riding mountain bikes, jumping off gorges into the water. It's just dangerous expeditions like that. So yeah, Ithaca is it's an interesting spot.
Did you play sports growing up? Anything?
I did. I played football. So football was my kind of ticket. I thought that I would play in college, and just didn't happen. Got injured in high school at the end of my junior year, and tore my left ACL. And at the time, it was like there was the operation was just cut, slice open.
Oh yeah, back then.
I had the Lenox Hill brace from Joe Namath, which was brutal.
Okay, I don't even know what that is. What is that?
The Lenox Hill brace was one of the first. Joe Namath wore one in the Super Bowl. So it was kind of like this metal contraption that was very full of metal, and it would help the ACL joint. And it was very archaic, cumbersome. But at the time when it came out, it was a very popular, like it was the knee brace to have.
Okay.
And I was fortunate to get one. And I wore it my senior year. It really didn't do much of anything. All I did was get my knee scoped. I didn't get it fixed. So it kept like slipping out, and it just got annoying. And then I just, decided that that's not going to happen. So went to Ithaca and studied, went to the television radio department there, and then just got into studying film.
And was that because of what your dad did? Did you grow up like
it was? It was a little somewhat of what he had, kind of living in that kind of environment with him, and meeting and going to events and meeting great people. And theater, the background was always something of a place where I could really feel like I was at home, and it made sense to me. And obviously when you go and play sports in high school, it was like, are you going to play sports, or are you going to be a theater kid? And I chose sports, probably because it was the more popular decision, and you wouldn't get, bullied, or, at that time it was kind of like, you got to play football. Why are you doing plays, man? Like, yeah. So that I had kind of suffocated that creativity inside early on. And, it's just, something that just kind of evolved. And I knew I wanted to do theater. And then I had people that I was like, I'm either going to go to New York City or go out to California. And the reason I went out to California was because I had two older sisters out there. They had already been there. I could kind of shack up with them. It made a little bit more sense for me. And I just finished watching Jim Morrison do, I just saw Val Kilmer doing Jim Morrison of The Doors. So I was kind of obsessed with Morrison at the time, my senior year. And I was like, I remember driving into LA. I was like, hey, that's where he was trapped when the fire happened with Pam, and all this shit was going on. And like, I was really living this kind of spirit of music at the time too. And I was like, I was so fascinated with him that it kind of drew me also to California. That makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like such a, I don't want to say stereotypical, but it does sort of seem like that story. Like when you study film and you want to get into acting, is there any route that doesn't involve basically living on somebody's couch and like scrounging and trying to get auditions?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, kind of, when you are alone, you are alone. You just have yourself, right? It's kind of, my parents kind of left me, and I was there, and I was like excited to be in California. And then the realization kind of hits like, well, you don't have a bed. You're sleeping on your sister's couch in a loft in downtown LA. It's loud. You're not going to get any sleep because of the partying that's going around all over the place. And you got to get up in the morning and, try to find work. And I had to put myself in a position. So I kind of attacked it like, I'm going to have to get resumes, and I'm going to go invade the studios, like actually get on the lot and go office to office, show my face, drop a resume, and see if I could find some work.
And this is like pre-internet, right? Wouldn't this be?
Yeah, this is circa 87, 80.
Oh, yeah.
Then, I would say 90, end of 90, just the beginning of 91. So 91 that was my kind of input in. I'd been going out to California around 88, and I knew, like, I just kind of fell in love with it. And I was like, I have to go. There was no real security. You could walk on studio lot. I put a suit on. I had one suit. And I figured, well, I might as well dress like an executive. Put the suit on. I got my stack of resumes. I just go in with them, and then I start hitting office buildings, like, how am I going to attack this? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to put myself in a position? And crazy enough, I mean, I fell into, it's a studio lot. It's big. There's the office spaces where I would just go and pass out resumes and get chased by security guards at certain times. Or I'd end up in an actual studio lot where they were shooting like Cheers, and I blended in, and I ended up being like an extra. I got free lunch. I just kind of blended into the environment, and made myself available to whatever would happen. And I remember being at Columbia Studios, and they were shooting Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, and there was Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder playing. Outside, I'm playing hack-a-sack, so I kind of joined in with them. Like, they're like, hey, what's going on? Like, it just evolved. And there were times where I was like, shit, I got to get out of this situation because they're going to bust me and know that I'm just some dude walking around. But obviously, during those times, it was a lot easier to get into those studios at the time. So that my attack was like, I need to get in front of people and throw resumes out and see what happens.
And do you just kind of have to, I guess the question is, do you have to do that? Like, is that kind of the only way to get your foot in there? Just be aggressive?
No, I mean, look, you can, I had been studying, I got into theater, and I did some plays in certain areas in Theater Row in California. I mean, the first play I did out here was in Orange County. I was living in Los Angeles. It took 2 hours to drive. I didn't know how far it was to get there, and I was just so happy to get a play. And it was, for me, it was like the travel. I don't care about the travel. You're either going to choose, like, for me, it was like, do some theater, study, do some classes, get some, I just didn't have the technique down to understand how to use my technique in order to climb the ladder a little bit more successful. I was very, extremely just young and just surviving on instinct and going with that flavor. And then everything else was like, well, you're going to mess up because you don't have any technique. Mm-hmm. So then I studied improvisational technique for 2.5 years with a great teacher. I got that under my belt. That helped. But, you want to put I didn't want to be the bartender, right? I didn't want to be the guy working at the restaurant. I didn't, I had some crazy odd jobs, but I wanted to be out. I wanted to be around. And I got jobs like working as a production assistant or in the prop department on movies. And I wanted to be around it rather than trying to get in and be on the outside. It's like my attack was like, how can I be smart enough to put myself in an opportunity or a position?
On the X is proudly presented by Mechanix Wear, the gloves trusted by pros. Originally designed by a legendary race mechanic, Mechanix Wear has become the top choice for anyone who needs tough, reliable protection. From construction sites to the front lines, these gloves offer unbeatable comfort, durability, and grip. Stay cool, dry, and in control with Mechanix Wear. Gear up for whatever comes your way. And just speaking personally, Mechanix gloves were the go-to glove for us in the military, certainly. And they're still my go-to glove when it comes to just working around the house. Glove that I've worn for decades at this point, and it's still kind of my go-to glove. Mechanix Wear gloves are available at most retailers, as well as on Mechanix.com and on GSA Advantage. Mechanix Wear is also proud to offer an exclusive 15% off discount through the ID.me program to military, veterans, and first responders. Click on the ID.me button in your shopping cart and follow the steps to verify your eligibility. So I read that you got kind of your breakout role on Buffy the Vampire Slayer because your neighbor saw you walking your dog. Is that?
I was, at the time, I had just finished a really 2.5 year technique school, like I said, with an improvisational a teacher. And I was doing some commercial work. I was starting to get, I had a commercial agent, so it allowed me to go out. And I was landing some beer ads Yeah,
Yep.
some that never aired because they were just shot by great directors that were very dark. And at the time, I know I kind of put it out to the universe, like, I need a manager. I need somebody to help me get to the next position or open some doors for me. And I was living in West Hollywood, and this great apartment, and I would walk my dog, because I had to take my dog out. My dog's name was Bertha Blue. So I would be walking my dog, and at the time, I had just broken up with this girl, and she lived like kind of 2 blocks over, and she was telling me about this manager who had kind of lived in the area. And I was like, well, I should set up a meeting to meet this guy because maybe you can help me do it. So they did. And I walked into the meeting, and he was like, I'm either going to, I'm definitely going to sign you right away. He was watching me from afar walk my dog.
Okay.
So basically,
Okay.
that's how the kind of story started. So yeah, he had seen me walking my dog, and he was going to actually approach me. And then I got into the meeting with him through my ex-girlfriend's friend. It just all happened so very quickly. And yeah, I was walking my dog, and he saw me, and he brought me in, and literally 2 days later, I had an audition for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It was a character. They had a difficult time finding it. The casting director ended up being this great Italian woman, Marcia Sholin, who was from New York City. And like literally, I think it was 6 days later, I had gotten the part, and I had kind of got that role. And fortunate enough for me, and so grateful for that time that I was able to make something of it, and it just kind of happened. And when I met Marcia, I was still very green. Didn't really know what I was doing, and we had talked about Italian New York restaurants for about an hour before I even did the read. Right? So she's like, we probably could read this copy. So I read the copy. It went well. I'm nervous as shit on the inside. I still am kind of struggling with what my body's all about and maintaining that focus. And then I went to the next level, then read with the producers, got out of there, and then I was offered the gig, and the rest is kind of history with that one.
And was it, when you got that, was there anticipation that, oh man, this thing is going to be a hit? This is going to be kind of like a cult following?
No, I don't. There really isn't any type of anticipation. I was just so happy to work. I was just so happy to get a gig that would pay me 7 episodes out of the 12 or 13 episodes that were originally ordered from the network. So I was like, hey, I can pay my rent. I can go out a little bit here. Maybe I'll buy myself a suit. Like I was just happy to be able to pay my bills. And you don't think of those types of, oh, this is going to blow up. I mean, I think if you go across the board with anybody or any actor, they're going to be like, no, we never thought this would be so huge. I mean, it just doesn't, you don't think that way. I mean, you just go like, yeah, I'm happy to be working. It's a cool project. I thought it was fun at the time. And then the character just blew up, and it became more than that. And the show blew up. Next thing I know, I got a spin off 2 years later, and it just roller coastered, and you just hold on for the ride. You just kind of like, you're doing this, and you're seeing the success of it, and you're trying to maintain at that time, God, I was just so all over the place, man. I mean, the focus level was always there. I was always prepared. I was just happy to be like, hey, this thing's working, and it's getting some traction here, and you're starting to take off here. And I was like, oh, well, I can get into this club over here, or it's a lot easier now to go to that restaurant over there. You just kind of flow with it, right? And then
what's that like, though? I mean, this is one of these things that I have no frame of reference of what that's like. I think a lot of people wonder about it, where you go from somebody who was just a regular person like the rest of us, don't know, and all of a sudden, lots of people know you. I mean, I wasn't somebody who watched that show, but I certainly knew who you were. Like, when
it hits, it's very hard to wrap your brain around it. You kind of feel like you're being pulled into this tractor beam, right? You know, in Star Wars, when they got caught, they're pulling the tractor beam in, and you feel like, oh my God, I can't get out. And you're going in, and you're like, this is kind of cool. It's scary. I don't know what I'm going to meet on the other side. And I just remember my father, who, God bless him, he's still alive. He's like, just really stay in the moment, enjoy what you have, be appreciative, be grateful. A very solid rock in my life back then, and even for today, always has been, and really kept me level-headed in a lot of ways. But the feeling can be very overwhelming. It can be very scary. It can be anxiety-ridden. But I was the type of guy that was so dialed in for work and preparation and discipline, I didn't think about anything else. I really thought about, okay, I'm getting my work for the next day and the next scenes. Like, I have to prepare like no other. Like, I took it like, this is my job. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show up. I'm going to be a professional, and I'm going to attack it and know my lines. I'm going to know my character. I'm going to want to fall down. I'm going to want to pick myself up. So my attack on it helped me kind of balance the other vanity of it, right? You get to go to these premieres and meet all these people, and then you slowly feel the toxicity of fame kind of come into the equation, right? And you're kind of like, it doesn't fit well on my skin, and you try to like, I don't want to be that, right? I don't want to become that, that person, and you feel it, and you have to be disciplined enough to always go back to your roots. It's so important. You have to be disciplined to have that sense of center inside yourself to know how it is that you need to get back there. And of course, you have to deal with life, right? You got to deal with relationships, family issues, health. It doesn't go away just because you find a break, and people see you and you're blowing up over here or there. They're like, oh, you have everything. It's like, no, we live lives like everybody else. We have to deal with certain things. Yes, our opportunities have given us success. We've worked hard to get to that point. But like everyone else, we all have things that we have to deal with in life.
Yeah. Yeah. So when that ended, I was talking actually with Paul at the beginning of this. I was saying, there's seemingly, anyway, a fair number of actors who, if they land something that's sort of like an iconic role, or whatever you want to call it, that they can get kind of pigeonholed there, where it's like you're stuck in either this type of role, or it's like you're never going to be seen as anything other than Angel, right? Like anyone, of course, just going to see. Yeah. And you managed to go from that and then have a whole nother, and then another one, right? You've got kind of 3 very successful back-to-back pivots. Was that, I guess, what was that like? Was that a concern of yours at all coming out of that, where you're like, oh man, I got to find the next thing somehow, and I don't know what that is? Did you have it lined up immediately? What was that like?
It was, from Buffy being such a classic, huge phenomenon, a cult phenomenon at the time. It was like riding high, cover of Rolling Stone magazine, Sarah and I just kind of maintaining that kind of orbit, right? And then getting your spin-off, right, to a second show called Angel. It shoots downtown. It's more of an adult-oriented show with metaphors that, are a little bit different from there. And coming out of that, it's like, okay, how do I don't really think about what is next. I just kind of present myself. I can say this easily now because I understand the process of it. But at the time, I was just like, hey, I got to hit the gym. I got to work out. Like, I always go back to the fundamentals of who I am. And I don't think about, well, I'm going to be pigeonholed, or I'm only going to be seen as this character. It's like, I'm grateful for all those moments. I'm grateful for the shows and what it got me. What you make of it next is up to you. I'm not going to sit back and, be a sloth and, pulled into toxic stuff. I just feel like you are representational of what that next move can be. You are the person that decides whether or not you're going to go after something. For me, when I had finished Angel, I had done some, independent movies that really never saw the day of light. I was just so happy to work with great actors. Then I went into Bones, and Bones was a completely different type of show, right? It was playing an FBI guy And I had known at the time that I wanted to make this character more of a sarcastic guy who worked at the FBI, who was a ranger, came in his past. And I worked really hard on that with my acting coach, Ivana Chubbuck, who I still work with today. I've known for over 20 years. So again, you go into it. And at the time, Fox was, Gail Berman, who was the head of Fox, offered me this role. I was fortunate enough. She's like, here, I have a script for you. We'd love you to do this. So one thing had led to the other, and I was present in it. And if I wasn't present, I don't think that I would be here where I am today. I would be somewhere else. And it just clicked, and I took the character, worked on it daily with my acting coach, and Emily Deschanel, who was the opposite of played Temperance Brennan on Bones. I was like, would you want to work with me on weekends on, breaking the script down, getting the characters? And she was like, yes. Like, to even get that from somebody on a show on your opposite, on your co-star, is like, that's very rare. Yeah. We did it for 9-10 years out of the 12 years of the run of that show. Every weekend, rewriting, doing improvisational skits, making it better than what it was. At the time when Bones came out, everybody had procedurals that were very plot-driven. We were like, we're going to drive this with the character. We're going to have fun. We're going to be like over a dead corpse body. She's, saying all these things, but what we're doing and how we're having the character's traits and the subtext, we're going to drive it with character. And it took, that first season was hard because a lot of the executives were like, what are you doing? Why are you making this choice? And, we believed in it. We stuck with it, and it worked, right? You have to kind of break through those adversities and those barriers. And just, if you feel it inside and you're working on it, it's going to work. So to answer your question, was a particular in my head thinking that, you're going to just play this role and that's it. No, I just wanted to keep continuously work on myself. If I can get myself worked on, I know the next stage is just going to benefit me growing as an artist, growing as a person, because I work very much like, hey, my world is my art. I'm not a classically trained actor. What I experience in my life is my art. Right? How I adapt that and how I use it. How do I make it more than what it is, right? As far as the truth is concerned, and my choices, they're truthful, but do I embellish them a little bit? Of course I do. Do I create with them? Am I curious? Of course I do, because I'm an artist. That's what actors do. And I was always also on top of that, even when I did Buffy, I was very much like, I wanted to direct. I want to produce. I'm not just going to go do a scene and go to my trailer and eat craft service. No, I'm going to stay with the director of photography. I'm going to learn about the lighting. I'm going to go over and hang out with the sound guys for 2 days. I'm going to watch how they work. I'm going to learn their techniques. I'm going to learn about lenses. I'm going to learn about lighting somebody. I'm going to learn how to boom someone. I'm going to learn the actual budgets of an episode. Like, that is, for me, that's what I love about it. Right. Yeah. So I engaged in all of that not because I had to, because I wanted to. I wanted to learn. I wanted to absorb like a sponge, and all that's paying off right now. Yeah. Right. All of that is paying off because that's what I do. I'm an actor. I'm a director. I'm a creator of shows. I direct. So that is my wheelhouse, but it took a long time, and you have to really sacrifice sometimes on weekends when you want to hang out with your family, but I got to go and drive to Hollywood and spend 2 hours with Emily and Ivana. Like, that's a Saturday. Well, you worked all night last night, so I got to get up and I got to hit the pavement, right? So to speak.
And we're going to get into this for sure with SEAL Team, but I'm curious what the research is like for you on a character like you'd have on Bones, because I would think on something like, if you're playing a vampire, like you got there's a lot of free reign, I would think, on how you can craft that character, because there's nobody in real life that's a vampire. Whereas playing a role that is a job that someone actually has, you have to somehow at least be true to some extent of what that person does. Like, do you have people on set that are like, okay, advisors on that? What's the research process?
Well, I mean, listen, even with the call world, when I had started before I'd gotten Buffy, I was so immersed in great actors like Gary Oldman.
Oh, yeah.
And Pacino, and like how do you study characters, how do you throw them out? So it's like, I think as artists we all emulate and we look at films and stories of things that they've done, and we don't copy it, but we bring it into our existence. We'll study scenes, we'll see how they portrayed certain moments, and we'll put it into our work. So, playing the occult character, like what do you draw off of a vampire? Well, I was very much in tune to Gary Oldman in The Professional. He was this manic kind of fucking diseased,
I remember
mental
that
kind of a guy that had to take a pill to kind of click into this personality. Yep. So I tapped into that when I played the evil side of Angel, right? When he was bad, right? You have a moment of happiness and you turn bad. Yeah. It's like, how do I play that bipolar kind of existence?
I've forgotten about that character. That character's wild, where he takes the pill.
Wild. He's a trippy. He's kind of like, he's a little bit, he's aggressively into his personality. He's very kind of Joker-esque, like look what Heath Ledger did with the Joker. There's this bipolarism about it that is extremely... It's like it's like it's a steak, eating a steak, and you're sharp with it. You look at the personality of it, and so that's how I derived a lot of that stuff. With Bones, it was adapting the humor, right? It was adapting what are the funny moments, what's the satirical comedy in the moments, right? Working with my acting coach, like finding the funny in it and not funny the drab in it or the intensity of it, like. Don't be so heavy on it. Like, have fun with it. Elaborate with props. Like, find things that are going to make sense only to the character, right? Like, what is the subplots in your heads that are going on? What are you thinking with the person opposite you? What is your technique there? What is your subtext? Like, those are secrets that you learn and you work on with the other person. And with Emily, that's how you create chemistry. Everybody says, oh, your chemistry was so great. Yeah, we had a really strong chemistry, but you got to create it. You got to work on it. It isn't, you're fortunate to have that person, but you got to work on it. You have to work on the mystery of what you're thinking when you're delivering lines. The story is what happened to you, like the desires, like all of that plays in and people see that. So with Bones, we had a guy who was, Mike Grasso, who I'm still very close with. He was a U.S. Marshal. He was an L.A. cop, and he worked with the CIA. He just recently retired. I mean, this guy's seen it all, right? So I would just go out and work with Mike on the tactical stuff. When I first started Bones, how do you shoot a gun? How do you I didn't know any stuff. I'm not gun. I'm not very. I remember him taking me out, and I'm like, I have a scope, and I'm looking down a scope to shoot a target. And I get on to do that lying on my stomach, and I put the scope right up to my eye. And I know he knew this was going to happen. I fired, and bam, I got hit. And I'm like, thanks, Mike, for telling me that was hit me in the eye. And he laughed. And he's like, you got to learn the hard way sometimes. And, I appreciate that. Those are the things that I appreciate. And, it took a lot for me to understand just firearms in general, right? Like, so he was there as a technical advisor early on. Like, what does the FBI do? Like, how do you why do you put colorful cards on a board? Like, Booth would hang out and go to a crime scene and have all these index cards, and they're all different colors. Well, Mike used to do this. He'd be like, okay, this color represented where it was. This color represents what he was wearing. And you put up on the board, then you start to visualize a picture of who this person could have been or what he's all about. I was like, I found that fascinating. So I incorporated it into the character. But stuff like funny pens that used to undress themselves when you turn them upside down, that was like, my acting coach is like, hey, it's a funny pen. You break it out and you're like, those little things always added up for that character. So for Bones and for Booth, there was some technicality to it, but it was not the type of show that sustained itself for 12 seasons because of that, right? It wasn't that. It was more about the improvisational skits that we did. It was stretching the boundaries. It was creating the chemistry and maintaining that and jumping the shark. Because once you kissed and you hooked up, it was like, now what? Show's over, right?
Yeah.
That's how the show begins. Like, what's the opposite of that? It's not all, the honeymoon period's over. Like, how do we deal with that? Like, what is he like? That's what I loved about Bones was we were able to jump sharks and we were able to still maintain character drive and did it in a way where by the time season 4 or 5 rolled around, you saw all those procedurals on all those other networks changing. You saw them all going, we want character. We want a show like this. Like, it just starts to kind of evolve. Right? They all, Hollywood likes the copy. Oh, it's successful. I want that. I want that type of show. You know, I want people who can tune in. It's like, it's mindless. It's fun. It's an adventure.
Do you know if did your fans from Buffy come along with you to Bone? I was just thinking about the Venn diagram of your 3 shows, right? So you've got Buffy, you've got Bones, you know, Detective, FBI, and then you've got SEAL Team, and it's like, I'm wondering.
Oh, you forgot Angel. You forgot Angel.
Sorry.
Okay.
I yeah. Part of that universe, but
kind of like a stripe, man. It's a stripe. It's a cake eater gets a stripe, right? You gotta observe all the medals that you get.
Thank you for using that term too, because that's what I am. Yeah, just thinking of that, like the Venn diagram of the people that watch SEAL Team versus the people that watched.
Of course, it's a completely different show, right? It's a cult universe, and it's like they're so in tune with that, and they're so diehard. Those fans are great, man. I love them. Those are the people that brought me up, right? Those are the people that support it. Those are the people that are there and are still there. It's like Buffy, Angel, Bones, SEAL Team, films in between, family. Like, it's crazy how the picture is looking, and I wouldn't change a thing. I would not change a thing. But they're different types of fans for sure. But they come along for the ride. So
let's talk about SEAL Team. So how did this come about for you?
Well, at the time, I would just finish doing Bones. I was like, I'm not getting involved in a 12-year commitment to a network show just because I was tired and there was a lot going on. I had known about. I had taken some meetings at some other networks, and graciously, they were very open to, like, what would you like to do next? And I said, I just really kind of want to chill out. I just rest, and I don't want to think, too hard. I was kind of burned out, and I'd met with the CBS people, and they're like, "Oh, we have these 2 great projects. I know exactly which one to send you." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever. You don't think about it." And they had sent me a script before I had met with Chris Chulak, who was executive producer, the guy who sold the show. I was meeting Chris from a director's perspective. I still want to direct right now. I don't want to get into leading a show. I just would like to spend some time behind the camera and just kind of make that transition before I jump back in front of the camera. So me thinking, all right, I know the script. Okay, from a character's perspective, the character was never there on page. It was a long script. It was kind of boring. I was not into it. But I knew going in that I'm going to talk to you about directing, but I'm going to also come in from a perspective of what this character could be, right? So in the back of my head, I'm kind of thinking, all right, I have to go in like Jason Hayes, but also as David Boreanaz talking about directing. So there's a mindset, right, that I know how to go into these specific meetings. So we sat, we talked, had a great dinner, talked about life. Chris is kind of like a fabric. He's like, the 2 of us are very much like this. And we just hit it off. And they're like, hey, we want you to play this role. And, we're going to shoot in New Orleans. It's, you're going to train, and we're going to start shooting in a month and a half. And I was like, you know what? I'm not moving to New Orleans. My kid plays ice hockey. This true story. And there's no ice in New Orleans, so I'm out. There's nothing on the script that I like. The character is not there, and which ended up being a kind of a blessing for me, because sometimes you can just create, right? And then you have a kind of a clean palette.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at it that way, right? What you think is dead, if you pivot, it becomes something real, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And Chris was bummed. And he's like, well, I'll bring you on to direct some of them, whatnot. And I was like, all right. And then I was like, said goodbye to it. I'm sitting, in the family room, having a drink. And I'm like, I'm kind of thinking to myself, did I make the right decision? Did I, it could have been a cool character. I really don't even know what a Navy SEAL is, to be quite honest with you.
Really?
Right? Because, are you fucking kidding me? These guys are the baddest of the bad. These guys are the best. Like, you're not gonna. I was at the time. I was just like, I was like, Marines are the best. Come on, man! Like, Marines are like the guys that are like Full Metal Jacket or whatever. Like, Marines.
I have lots of Marine friends, and all my in-laws are Marines, so the Marines are awesome.
I was like, I love them. I always think the Marines, right? I don't think special operators. I don't know nothing about them. So that goes by for a week. I get a call Sunday night. I'm watching a basketball game. My agent calls, said, would you want to revisit this role on SEAL Team? They're having some issues with the guy that they hired on. And those issues, when I say issues, they just wasn't working for them. Because granted, there was nothing on the page to begin with. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this person has nothing really to work with. So I could see the problem of what's happening here. So now it was like, okay, different conversation. I'm not shooting this series in California. I'm shooting this series. Here's where I'm going to shoot it. I'm like, Jaden, where do you want to play hockey, man? If you want to go to the East Coast, we'll look at places in Boston to shoot it, right? It'll be on the ice. Like, long story short, I was fortunate to work with them and get to a place where it was like, okay, let's get the deal in place. Now you're kind of got to fast rope in. You're coming off of a Black Hawk or a C-17 in 2 days. We got a ship out in Louisiana. It's the fucking money's grinding. You're going to lose. This show is going to be fucking DOA fast. So it's like, okay, now I got to go in. Now I got to get to the character. And I'm talking to my acting coach, and she's like, oh, you just want to do it because you just want to get out of town. I'm like, kind of, yeah. So I'm like, all right, now I'm fast roping in to save a show. I show up on set on the C-17 and I do a scene and with Jessica, and she's like, wow. And I'm like, what, did I do something wrong? No, she's like, oh, you just came in, you're all bally and you're throwing bags around and you're playing this character, you're playing this personality. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's what these guys do. They're kind of like, I'm creating a character here. And she's like, oh, it was so refreshing. Thank you for being here. So I was able to kind of float in, drop in, save it. It was a great experience. Fucking hardest thing I've ever done. Like, I was like, what am I doing? Almost died once. Got the shit beat out of me. I was like, for 2 weeks I shot this thing, and I was thinking to myself, what have you done, dude? Like, what? Why? Why are you doing this? What is the purpose? What's the calling for you? The physical attributes, the mental attributes, because I wasn't in that shape. I was like, how am I going to attack this character? How am I going to go in and understand? So I was like, I got to take a mental approach to this. I have to know what these guys think, how these guys operate, what are their stories. Like, I got to get in here, right? Rather than the lines right now. I can, the physicality, like, that'll happen. But I have to get into, like, what's behind it, right? Who are they? What do they do? How do I live that? And there were so many amazing, great stories and so many amazing moments that the special operator shared with me. Some where I couldn't even believe, I didn't even understand what they did, in a way of like how I would be dead in 2 seconds, right? And the mental capacity to hold on to those specific moments and what it does to you as a person, and emotional, and the trauma. I was like, yeah, really leaned into that a lot. I had to lean into it. I was like, this is where I have to lean into. And again, I worked very hard with my acting coach, Ivana Chubbuck, and she was great because we're trying to bring some levity to this guy. When you do a show for 8 years and 7 seasons, PTS, TBI, first kills, it gets like suicide. It's like, it's so much. Like, how do we find levity in it? Like, what do we do? It's like, God, it's so dark. It's so depressing. How do we do that? So that was always a challenge. That was always a hard thing to do.
That's, it's wild to me that you had never heard of SEALs.
No,
like, you had no military background at all. Like, didn't have any. No,
my uncle was a POW in the Korean War. My father was in Armed Forces Radio, was stationed in Panama, and that's it.
Okay.
That's pretty much it. I know. I'm not really, as a kid growing up, we we would hit the woods and we'd get sticks and we'd play, Army, and I had the Green Army guys, and I had the GI Joe. Like it was just kind of like cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It was like
Okay, so
a lot to unpack there, right?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to get into obviously. So it's funny to hear when someone like you says, I didn't think much of this, and it's DOA and all this stuff, and obviously it's become a very popular show, and done so well. So I kind of want to get into a little bit of the training behind it, the different types of training, for you, and what that was like, but then also some of the things you've learned along the way, like you were talking about the teams, about the guys, that kind of stuff, and even how it may have changed your perspective on these guys. So, but start with the training, like just on the physical side, like what have you had to get into that you had no experience in? What was it like? What was the hardest part for you?
Well, at the time, and I still do, not as much as I used to, I play a lot of ice hockey.
Okay. I was going to ask you, is that like your thing? Like is ice
hockey? Like when it comes to sports, I love the NHL. I love the NFL. I love the Eagles. I love the Flyers. Like I love hockey. I mean, I think of them like just warriors on ice. They're skating on blades. They got sticks in their hands, and it's fast. It's effective. It's everything I can look at from a professional hockey player. I can look at it as a special operator.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure.
Every part of their joints and their muscles are being used. Their hands, their wrists, their forearms, their brains, their cognitive functions, their speed, their efficiency, their crossovers, like their attack. Like
I think any kind of tight-knit unit, sports team, whatever it may be, all of those principles, right?
That's why I loved it, man. That to me was like heaven. Like that to me was like, I love this show because of that. Like that was like the big passion I had with it. So I applied it to like, how do I train? Like, what I train with my trainer 3 times a week. I'm doing, low impact stuff. At the beginning, I was like high impact. I'm pounding the pavement. I'm running hills. I'm carrying bags on my shoulders. I'm doing reps and reps. I'm doing a lot of cardio. Didn't get into the pool a lot at all. Didn't get into the water a lot. Just stayed on the land, doing a lot of rope work, doing a lot of ball slams, doing a lot of weight training. The weight training got a little obsessive, right? It became like this obsession. You got to like all the other guys in the show. It's like, however you want to tick it, when you're on a show with that much testosterone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all pumping weights and they're all getting big and they're all taking what they need to take and they're hitting supplements and whatever they're doing, you become kind of obsessed with it and you kind of lean into it a little bit. You start to dabble. You're like, okay, let's take these types of supplements. Let's get here. Let's try some testosterone, which is like the worst thing for me. I got big shoulders to begin with. It was like a month in, I'm like, I'm angry. Like,
oh my God.
I'm not playing the Incredible Hulk here. I'm not doing this. I'm not dumping blood. Like, what is this? For what? So I did a lot of ice hockey training. I stayed with that. I loved it. A lot of skating, a lot of lifting, a lot of pounding, and the show itself lent itself. You just did. One thing I always say about SEAL Team is you can't hide.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. Not from an actor's perspective, and also from a physical perspective of playing a role of this nature. You'll be exposed like this. It's like so easy. And when I first came on, I'm sure I was exposed like, oh, he can't hold his gun right. What are we going to do? We got to help. We got to work with him over here. And they did. And they were great. They were fantastic. And I'm not a big firearm guy. I don't, that's not my obsession. I'm obsessed with classic cars. That's my type of speed. That's my bullet, man. That's my gun. Is my fucking Mustangs. Like, that's my ride. That's my thrill. So, they helped me along the way to do all these types of things. And as you're also doing missions, and you're jumping out of Blackhawks and you're rappelling down, it's like, you got to be ready. You got to learn. You just got to know how to do that. So I had the physicality somewhat in check. I just had to enhance it. I had to grow with it. I had to take on the boundaries of diet, what to eat, how to lift. And then, of course, these guys like special operators are kind of like, they grow their beards. They're kind of fit in. They're a little bit more heftier. They're not like really slim cut guys. They're just kind of like, ooh, they're fucking heavy dudes, man. And And I say that with all respect. I mean, you know, they're very much in
I
shape,
totally know what you mean. Yep.
but they're just a little bit more
I get it.
rough around the edges. I always said they're kind of like Pigpen, dude, in the Snoopy world. It's different.
Yeah.
So the physicality came slowly.
And what about the tactical training? Like, how does that
It was great. I mean, we had the best of the best. There's no, our show was loaded with, you know, real SEALs and real tactical guys. So it was easy. It was like, you know, our armorer, Mike Papik, was the best armorer around, but we had the best guy. Like,
yeah.
I'm giving a special operator a rundown on how to operate firearms. It's like, you're not going to get any safer. I'm sorry.
Yep.
You're not going to get any more better. You're only going to get better because you're just going to learn something day in and day out, right?
Yeah. Are you doing like, and how far does it go? Are you doing, or like, are you personally fast roping? Are you jumping out of planes? Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. We're hanging out. We're in Blackhawks. We're roped in. You know, first 3 seasons were crazy, man. It was like, we're doing the show real. It's going to be real. You show up on set. For me, my mentality was like, and I probably drove the cast crazy. Some of the cast members crazy like this. Well, we're all cleaned up. We look all good. You know, we're all shiny. I'm like, no, you fucking not. You just got out on a mission. You're banged up. I want dirt on your faces.
Yeah.
I want you dirty. I don't want you clean, man.
What was
like,
that?
Screw the makeup, dude. Just get in there. And I'm sure I drove him crazy. Like, oh, this guy drives me crazy. When Chris Chulak had said to me, I want to do it real. I want to do what these guys go through. I want it authentic. That's it. That was the stamp that sold me so much. I was like, okay, I'm cutting my veins open and I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I want to be real. I want to be flying in Blackhawks. I want to be hooked in. I mean, that first ride on a Blackhawk with the pilot, I was like, this is an unbelievable experience.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Were there any of those things where you're like, holy shit, like this is terrifying at all? Was it, you know, jumping?
I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie to begin with.
Okay.
So the one thing I do not like doing of all of the things is the rappelling.
Okay.
That's the one thing, having the rope and going down slowly and going down. I always feel like I'm done. I'm sliding. The rope's going to burn my hands and I'm fucked. I just never got to that point of accepting that fear. I was like, I'm done. I'm out. That's the one thing. Flying in helicopters, jumping out, I had directed an episode where we pulled these guys off. Like, I came in and I pulled all 12 SEALs up and we took off on a rope. Like, it was a spot rig. It's never been fucking captured, dude. And we did it. It was like intense stuff, man. Yeah. Like, the missions were always fun. The approaching and breaching, getting indoors, clearing, learning in front of the person behind. That was always fun. By the time we get to like season 3 or 4, we're so seasoned, it's like, let's go and crush. I remember shooting in Serbia and we were doing a clear. There was no dialogue. I put some old Rush in my headphones and put the cans overhead and I just ripped the floor, man. It was the best experience ever. It was cool. So we had the best of the best there. Every day. I
heard that, or I read, I think that it's something like 100 veterans that are supported the show. Is that accurate?
In front of the show, in front of the camera, behind the camera. Scotty Fox, God bless him, was a real SEAL. It was my stunt double, just a phenomenal guy. And you really feel like the mentality of these guys, like what they've gone through, what they've done, what their life is like now, like live, breathe, eat, special operator.
Yeah. So talk.
I was at 100%. Like, there was no, and when I say you're easily exposed, you are. You show up, there was no rehearsals. You'd probably come on set, you'd read the dialogue off book, and you come and shoot it. Like, there's no marks.
So talk about that. Talk about the kind of the mental side of it, because I'm curious not only like what your mental preparation was like going into the show, but then, you talk about telling the authentic story. Like, what are those guys? I mean, obviously they can teach you the tactical stuff and all of that, and that's fun, and kicking indoors and everything. But like, in terms of the story to tell about the lifestyle, about whether it's PTSD or traumatic brain injury or all these things. And I'm assuming a lot of this you may not have even been exposed to before the show. So
no,
yeah.
I mean, none of it. I mean, again, like I said, their stories and their experiences, whether they were on a mission or back home, how they were taken in, how they adapted, real and special operators and veterans that were in the writers' rooms that did this type of material. You gain stories and knowledge off of what they've gone through, and like you listen to them, and you're allowed into the Oz, right? You're behind the curtain. You're now functioning in the brain of how these men operate. What do they do after kills? How do they function? Like, it was just kind of like conversations that I would have with them. Like, what do you feel? It's like, so a lot of them were just kind of like, yeah, it was a job, it was a mission, we got it done. Yeah. But you could almost kind of feel something that was behind their eyes that was, I almost kind of related to this. I played in a charity hockey game, and it was, McSorley was on the ice, and, he used to be Gretzky's enforcer, right? So I'd be on the ice, and I was playing with him. He was opposite, and I was like kind of messing around with him, joking, right? Well, I cross-checked him on the side with a pretty good push. Well, he fucking turned. His eyes went dark like a shark. I was like, he'd been to one little shove, and I went flying. And I was like, that is the feeling I would get on set with some of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing the temperament, how far do you want to ask questions? How much do you want to push back? How much do you want to feel? And graciously, they were always open to really talking about their time, right?
Yeah.
Their time, what they did. Some were a little bit more laid back. Some were kind of like, one of my favorite guys is a friend of mine, Ryan Sangster, who was a stunt double and is into acting. I mean, I used to just laugh with him all the time. I mean, it was kind of like, and this goes back to, the show and experiences, because I've done plant medicine. I believe in ayahuasca. I've done that experience. We shot it on the show. And next thing you know, I'm going to Costa Rica. I'm hitting rhythmia, and I'm like, I'm seeing the caterpillar.
Wait a minute. Wait. So did you do this? Did you do that for the show, or was it?
I will say this. I heard of it while I think it was end of season 1, season 2, was fascinated. So I'd already put out to the universe, like, I'm interested in this.
Okay.
Story of what plant medicine is about. It came to me. I didn't go search it out, right? It just was slowly kind of invading my territory. Like, oh, Jason goes and he's got to deal with his head. He's going to take some ayahuasca, and like, he's going to figure out, he's going to see things. He's going to heal. He's going to be better. It was a storyline. Next year, I'm like going to Costa Rica. So everything kind of, the universe presented all that to me already. It was like, hey, the truth is here, and this is what you're going to do. And next thing you know,
it was ayahuasca. Did ayahuasca or anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a great experience. And listen,
cool.
It was something that really is, and I go back to it because, Ryan he does plant medicine too. So it's like two minds think alike, right? In a lot of areas, because in talking about plant medicine is one thing, but talking about plant medicine with somebody who's gone through it and done it, it's like,
I've done it.
It's, it's like the blood. It's like blood flow. I get it. I understand, like, the humor, the laughter starts coming out, like, at the most magical moments.
Yeah. I did not do ayahuasca. I've done psilocybin, but I had a very harrowing.
Well, that's psilocybin right here. Ayahuasca's here.
Yeah. Different. Yeah.
Way, way different, man. So it just came to me, and but working with these guys day in and day out, their temperaments, right? Their focal points. How intense they are, whether they're orchestrating an approach, right? Orchestrating a hit. We talk about it. They do it. They work with the stunt guys. This is how we're going to do it. This is how you're going to enter. This is what you're going to cover. So that in itself would lend to itself, like, oh, you really did this. I remember shooting in Serbia in a Syrian refugee neighborhood and talking to one of the guys, and like, okay, I'm going to put you through an exercise. You're sitting here and you got all these buildings, and you're hearing voices all over the place, and these windows over here, and then way down there, you're kind of here. You guys, how are you going to take cover? It's like, well, you just saw something slip in a window and a curtain's flying. Like, you're exposed pretty much all over the place when you're in the neighborhood of that craziness, right?
Yeah.
And they start to build in your head, and you're like, bro, I have no idea how you survived. I really don't. And I think survival in the moment is getting through the moment. Some make it, some don't. Some, for us, it's a cut. For them, it's live or die. There's no in between, right? There's nothing in between.
Did you have any preconceived notions about the community going in that ended up being completely overturned or different? Or was there something that was super surprising where you were like, wow, I didn't think. It's just, the whole thing is interesting to me because you're a third party in a way that is abnormal, right? Like, I can share my experiences. Those guys can share their experiences. There's like doctors and therapists who can sort of talk about the experience, but you're like sort of this embed with these guys where you can.
Guys, literally, everybody is just said, you guys can come have dinner with us. I'm just a guest table. I'm a guest at the table. I don't preach myself as being a special operator. I don't preach myself like, I love the character, but I was a guest at the table.
No, I was thinking.
I'm very fortunate and humble to be a guest at the table.
You remember there was like an ad. I mean, you're a little bit older than me, but when I was a kid, it was like, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV, right? Like that's I'm not a SEAL, but I play one on TV, right?
I play one on TV. I'm not a doctor, but I'm walking in footsteps that you're allowing me because you're giving me the information needed to do that. And in doing so, you're exposing, you're trusting me, you're opening up. And I really value that a lot. And what I also value is you see this community as special operators that also, they do what they do. They go in and sacrifice all that. But they also create in a situation that could be bad, right? Like, there's a bad situation. We had the first episode. They got to set up a triage, right? You see them work together. It's like an amazing, that's what I love about the brotherhood there. Like, they know how to take care of the situation, whatever that may be. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
It is. Well, it's remarkable. It is humbling, and it's an amazing experience to see that.
Well, I think anybody that's at the top of their craft, whatever that may be, I think is exceedingly good at problem solving. Like, they have that skill, and combat is just problem solving with life and death consequences, right? That's it. But you even talk about your own, like, how much work you put into your craft, and that's just problem solving, right? And so,
right.
I mean, that's all it is, in my estimation.
It's problem solving. It's also, the diameter of curiosity goes up in my book with that. The diameter of what they go through, how they handle themselves. I mean, we're talking about a community here that is, yes, this is their profession. I love it. There's no political agendas. I love that. Like we've had people who said in the first season, well, who's right and left? Like, it's like, guys, we're just that. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, come on. Like,
thank you.
We had one person who was like, well, why do you shoot just the perspective of the SEALs? What about the enemy? I'm like, I don't give a fuck about the enemy. We don't give a fuck about the enemy. We're staying with our guys. Like, that's what the show is about. We stay with them. We don't go over to the enemy and shoot them looking at us. No, it's not.
Yeah.
That's perception, right? It's perception.
Was there, so looking across the whole arc of this character, is there something that stands out as, like, whether it's an episode, a segment of episodes where it was like, that was really challenging. Like, that was the hardest thing, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever. Like, what was the hardest part throughout the whole series for you?
I mean, it's this twofold question for me, because I look at the ensemble and I say, no brother left behind, side by side, and you kind of look at the whole of a team and what they're comprised of and how many are in it. I mean, we only had like 8. You guys now have like 32 guys or something. Like, it's crazy the amount of people that you have on one team. Bravo has like 8 guys, so I don't think that exists, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you learn, like, working together. You're only as strong as your weakest link, picking people up, which was very relevant in the first season 1 and 2, and then obstacles from the outside and production and the bullshit I call the toxicity kind of comes in and tears that apart, right? It separates guys, whether that's inside the cast or outside of the crew or the higher ups. It's just always something that's going to imbalance the boat, right? There's going to be, hey, sit up in the front, and I'm going to hang out with this person over here, and then you find yourself alone, and then it's like this wave of kind of like uncertainty at certain times, right? But you still have this motto of like, we're in this together, it's great, but it's like over years it starts to become like, are you really there for me, or are you just fucking saying that? That's a whole nother conversation, right?
Yeah.
Physically, I had it when I directed, it was tough because it was such you encouraged to be so authentically in it. And when I direct, I'm just like in it, and I'm directing and I'm acting. And we did a show called God of War, the one I directed, and it was the snow episode. We lose Dietz, and I'm trying to find her. And, you know, we had been shooting up Big Bear, literally a snowstorm had hit, and I'm carrying this dog on my back, blooded up. I'm working with this beautiful, beautiful dog, and I'm creating a relationship with her that I did before I started shooting. And I have the DP with me, and it's like we have an hour and a half before the snowstorm hits. We're knee deep in snow in certain areas. I'm like, at this point, the only way I'm going to get my moments and my scenes with this dog is to tell everyone to fuck off, give me the DP, and let's go shoot every little fucking sequence. There were 9 setups in one plot of land in snow as it was starting to snow heavier and heavier and heavier.
Yeah.
We got all the scenes. I kept the dog on my back. I didn't stop. I kept carrying her. I fell down. I played it. I used it. It was tough. I was stuck in snow. My knees were hurting me. You know, I got a bad left knee to begin with. My hips were hurting me. Everything was hurting me, but I was so dialed into staying in the character and the moments and having Jim Muro capture those moments and getting in and shoving lenses in my faces and finding the moments and like picking the dog up and going to the next thing and improvising with the emotionality of the dog. I wish that we could just compile all those emotions and show it. But, you know, on a 45-minute show, you've got to cut all that stuff up, right? So you don't see all that stuff. But it breathed and it lived and it existed, and it was it's a beautiful moment to go through, from the character's perspective, but also with a dog on your back. And protecting that dog and holding it, knowing its temperament, right? Yeah. Knowing the energy, how to transmit it. So that was very challenging. It was very arduous. And I'm not one to say, hey, that was, was my favorite episode. That was the show. Every episode that we did on the show was special. The nutritional aspect of a show like this, and, we talked a little bit about plant medicines, and we talked about like what your routine is. I'm very much in tune with the nutritionist that I've been working with. I do a lot of blood work. I do there were parts of my early on in the season where career was like, okay, you're taking way too many supplements. Let's break it down. I'm at a point in my life right now where I understand what works for me and what doesn't work. Yeah. How does the engine flow?
You look good, man. I had to look it up, but you're 55. I would not have guessed that. You're looking good, bro.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
You got to hit. I always say, like, you got to take care of the mental aspect of the body. You got to take care of the heart. You got to keep it balanced. You got to take the right supplements that work, not overly dosed of supplements. At one point I was like, I can't swallow 42 fucking pills.
I think we've all been there at some point. Yes. Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, I know it. I understand it. It's clean. I'm a high protein guy. I know it works for me. I know what I'm going to take. I'm in tune with what the land is going to give back. I'm very much involved with people that are, local farmers and organic people and guys that like Kansas City Cattle Company, who I thrive off of. Like, these are guys that are produce meat the right way. Like, I love stories like that, and I tap into it. And I think that is the balance to being healthy. Simple, man.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we got to wrap this up, but what's next for you? What's next on the show is wrapping up.
People have asked that to me. So there's a lot that I have that's going to pop soon, but
cool.
I've always been like this. And from the day I started on getting my first break, it's like, I'm here, the now, and I'm shooting, and this is what I'm doing. I'm here doing your podcast. I'm here with my life, what it is. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I live so much in the now that people get very stubborn and can get upset with that. So I sacrifice for the now. I live in the now. I know that there are a lot of great things that are coming up, and I'm just excited to have to close this chapter and also this series the way we're closing it.
Thanks for listening to On the X, an IRONCLAD original presented by Mechanix Wear and the official podcast of the Navy SEAL Foundation. For more information about the work of the foundation and how you can get involved, please visit NavySealFoundation.org. See you next time.